There may be some opportunities for us to build space in the near future because we've expanded our program so much that we're going to run out of space. Right now we're converting a building at the Windward campus or West Campus, people remember it that way, to add 60 new welding bays because comparing our welding program to Houston, they're a community about 10 times our size,
Right.
and they have about 5% more welding students than we do.
Welcome to United We Podcast, the official podcast of the United Corpus Christi Chamber of Commerce, the only chamber podcast in South Texas. I'm your host, Al Ariola Jr., and we're here to explore the latest business insights, community stories, and opportunities shaping the coastal bend. Whether you're a business owner or just passionate about our region, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, Chamber family and friends. Today we are joined by one of our I should say new. You were a former member, but we have you back, and I'm proud to say that. David Loeb of Landlord Resources and many other enterprises. But David, you're also elected official. You are currently on the Del Mar Board of Regents, correct?
I am, yes.
All right. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Well, I guess before we start talking maybe about your business, about Del Mar, you've been a long, I would say, community leader. You're a voice out there that I would say is a pretty good, strong voice of reason. You're pretty pragmatic. I think you understand, especially as a business owner, legal consequences of decisions, contracts, liabilities, different ways of looking at the world than I think maybe some folks are looking at the world. But right now in the space of Del Mar, a lot of specific things that Del Mar is doing is very helpful to economic development in the workforce space.
Right.
And I know you've been very loud and proud in some programming, funding. I would argue while you've been on the Board of Regents, there has been an exponential kind of growth of investment, programs, things that are really cool happening at Del Mar. Where do you want to start? What do you want to brag about?
Well, I mean, I would say I'm very proud of the gains we've made on programming. You know, I feel like my contribution to the board has been to accelerate a shift from focusing on buildings and infrastructure to focusing on programs and making sure that we're doing everything we can to fill those buildings up. You know, I told President Escamilla when I joined the board that I was in the fill and space business, not the build and space business.
Yeah.
And so there may be some opportunities for us to build space in the near future because we've expanded our program so much that we're going to run out of space. Right now we're converting a building at the Windward campus or West Campus, people remember it that way, to add 60 new welding bays because comparing our welding program to Houston, they're a community about 10 times our size,
Right.
and they have about 5% more welding students than we do.
Wow.
And welding tends to be the gateway profession and training for a whole host of industrial jobs
Right.
and manufacturing jobs. And so those students are coming out and they're finding jobs, and then they're moving up, and that creates a spot for the next student to come along and get out of school and do that.
Well, I want to hit on that stat. So only 5% more in Houston?
Yeah, I think we're at 2,600 and they're at about 2,900. so
Wow.
about 5%. Yeah.
I mean, in many ways, Houston's market has similar,
Has a similar base.
industry,
Right.
everything, and wow. So, I mean, if we're developing them here, I mean, I'm assuming that we're growing them and the intent to keep them here, right?
Right. So 80% of our students stay in the market and work here. You know, that's different from a lot of schools. And we are very much focused on how do we take somebody who grew up here and how do we get them the training and education they need to get a good job here where they can stay here and they can take care of their family and themselves.
Well,
That's our mission. That's our goal.
And as I brought up, the Del Mar's development and continued programming, the median income kind of matches with exactly the work that you guys have been doing. Is that it was significantly lower, and now I think we're above the state average.
Right. Yeah, we're above the state average. We passed San Antonio about 4 or 5 years ago. I actually saw one that was really interesting for men with associate's degrees. In the last census, we actually have a higher median income than Austin does.
Wow.
And Austin tends to be the outlier. Everybody makes
Everybody
20,
wants
30% more.
yeah.
And in fact, and we've managed to do that as a community where our housing prices and access have been very competitive. So I saw when I was looking through some data, I saw a high school graduate, there's a higher high school graduate home ownership rate in Corpus Christi than among bachelor's holders in Austin.
I bet.
And so the capability to grow people's income but still be able to afford housing, that gives them the capability to fund their children's education, live a better life, whatever,
Right.
Give back to their community. And so that's been a very satisfying thing. And I was on council 14 years ago, had kids, took a break from politics. And when I came back, the things I remembered that I really enjoyed doing were the education focused things, workforce training. Back then we had expanded Craft Training Center. We added truck driving simulators to the college. And I said, those were things that when we did it, nobody yelled at us. Everybody was really happy about it because everybody here tends to like the idea of helping somebody get an education at a low cost and them being able to find a job where they can support their family.
Upward mobility.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up housing too. In many ways, still like access to the American dream. That concept is a dying concept, so to speak. And especially when you want to compare markets like Austin, good luck, right? Like, how do you even pretend to rent a home, let alone buy a home in those markets? Yeah. Well, back to the programming at Del Mar, certainly a healthy tax base that's helping contribute to that. And then certainly some great work at the state level that the Board of Regents, Carol Scott, President Escamilla, that constant advocacy at the Capitol. But moreover than that, though, let's go and be fair to our industry partners. They pitch in their
do.
fair share, huh?
Absolutely. I went to college in upstate New York, and my college roommate was also a government major, and he works at the city of New York.
Currently?
Yeah,
Okay.
currently.
Okay.
After
That's a
school,
fun city right now.
Yeah. He's got some stories about public
I
meetings that put ours to shame. But he was chief of staff for the downtown Manhattan council member during the reconstruction of the World Trade Center site.
Oh, okay.
He's done a lot of housing stuff. Now he's at the he basically is the guy who oversees all the testing for everybody getting a job, going into the police academy, stuff like that. And so I was telling him how, when we go up to Austin to fight for funding, we have chemical council and, various industry lobbyists helping us. And it blew his mind from a New York City bureaucrat point of view that people that they perceive of as being hostile to those things are actually very pro-education and very much partners with us in developing a workforce here that they can benefit from, but also that others can benefit from. They want to have trained nurses when they or their staff go to the hospital or the doctor, and so it's really been a very beneficial partnership for the college. They give a lot of money for scholarships. We have one of the best funded endowments of any community college in the state. I think we have one of the best funded endowments of any of the colleges in South Texas. And that's from a lot of people giving, but industry definitely gives. One of the things that they do that's really beneficial is they help us on our programs. Each one of our programs, whether it's industry focused or not, has an advisory group that works with our professors on what our curriculum is, because we want to make sure that our curriculum
Is real.
Right. And so, there's this great story about one of our administrative staff members who serves on one of the hospital district boards or one of the hospital boards, and they were talking about, the nurses come and they don't know how to use our machines, and they said, well, whenever you buy machines, buy an extra one, give it to us, and that's what we're going to train them on. Because we don't want them using different equipment
Right.
outside their education. We'll train them on that, so then they show up the first day and they can use it. That's what a community college is about. We're not training them to go to Alaska.
Right.
We're training them to work in Corpus Christi.
Or I mean, maybe the best analogy I can make is like a video game analogy. Is like they're learning on a PlayStation, and then all of a sudden they're on an Xbox.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And so one of the things that industry does a lot with us is they will, in addition to funding the scholarships, they will have, like on our process technology program, they'll have internships for students in the last year of their education. So they will start working for them or a contractor of theirs. And that gives them the real world experience. So while they're still getting their training, they can experience what it's like.
They're touching it. They're living it.
Right. And so you get that feedback of, oh, this is what I encountered. I want to learn more about this because I want to understand it better.
Gotcha.
And so, and it provides a seamless transition. So when they graduate, they've got a job. They know they've got a job. It's not that, weird thing where somebody graduates and then it's like, okay, now
What's
I have
next?
now I have to find out if it's useful.
Right.
If I can actually get a job. No, you've learned that you have a job.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those are hugely important partnerships. They create a lot of value for the students because they don't want to just spend the time, energy, and money getting an education and not know that they're going to get financial benefit from it.
What they're going to do with it, right?
Right.
Well, and looking back when I was here in college in Corpus Christi, I graduated in '03 from A&M Corpus, and mine was a liberal arts degree. It was a poli-sci degree, but I certainly, if I had to do it all over again, I would maybe like consider a lot of what I'm seeing with industry, the hands-on stuff. The STEM stuff is so fascinating. Now what you're seeing with also coding and everything like that. I've even tried it recently and kind of got like addicted as an adult. Like I can only imagine these kids that they're creating, they're making, they're touching. It's really cool stuff to see.
No, it's fantastic. There's this great story. We had a dual credit student at Robstown High School, and he got a lot of it done while he was still in high school, but he still needed a year left on his associate. So he came to Windward campus for the year after, finished an associate's in process tech, and then got a job from Flint Hills paying him $90,000 a year, plus benefits, plus overtime.
Yeah.
At 19.
Yeah, buddy.
And I was like, I heard that story, and I was like, if I had been making $90,000 a year at 19,
that's dangerous.
Very dangerous.
That's dangerous. I agree. You don't give me that much at that age.
I mean, yeah. And so we might have to add like the classes like that they have for the basketball players. Okay.
Oh,
now that you got it, here's restraint. How do you keep it?
No, I agree with that sentiment. And back to what I was trying to reference, my '03 graduation, it was like, okay, well, what is next? And find the best possible job that kind of makes sense. And, it was a different market. And then I would say the past 10 years have been really exponential growth in the Coastal Bend with these type of opportunities.
Absolutely. And I we have not grown in population, but we've grown in income. Mm-hmm. And I think that highlights the need to grab as many people as we can and give them the education that they need to contribute and be able to take care of themselves.
Right.
We can become a much wealthier community if we educate and train our community to do the jobs that we're creating, where we can have growth without necessarily having population growth. Population growth would be great, and we're kind of getting to the point where, we could use it.
Right.
But for a long time, it was how do we crack generational poverty? And I think we've made a huge amount of progress on that as a community working collectively.
And I agree with that. And so we certainly have our signature staple industries that have their presence, and a lot of them in the oil and gas space, natural gas space. The future's coming, though, and we're seeing it. And people are interested in further investment in other spaces that are adjacent, like green energy, like ammonia, all those carbon capture, different, again, adjacent stuff. What do you think the future is going to look like? Or how about this? I think we're already going to get there. What is going to be the need that's going to keep those kind of opportunities growing? What's the biggest need, you think?
Well, I think, there's a three-legged stool.
Right.
It's workforce education, power, and water.
Water, yeah. And
water's the shortest leg on that stool right now.
Very short.
And so I think, there's a lot of concern amongst a whole lot of people. I think anybody watching this knows what the what
Well, the world
issue
is watching, the nation's watching,
Right.
the state is watching, and everybody's watching.
You know, I was very heartened to hear that the governor, I think last week or week before last, he had a fundraiser down here, and he made the point that he was going to bring water to Corpus Christi. And so I think that's great that we're seeing some state level leadership on it. He is, you know, I don't agree with a lot of his politics,
Sure.
but water is absolutely a core thing for our state, and definitely for our city and our region. And so it's really good to see somebody with his ability to garner resources and people say, no, this is one of my focuses and I want to get this done.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of hope in the next coming weeks that we're going to see more about what
that
he's
could
going
look
to
like.
do, and how he's going to engage directly on that. But I'm really excited to see that because I think we're kind of stuck and mired here.
Well, and you brought up state level, and I'm glad you did. And we, the chamber, during our advocacy efforts during the legislative session, and when we were there in February and throughout the session, water. Everybody was talking about it, but everybody had a different lens, right? That Houston, it's leaking in the ground, and their pipes are all jacked, and so that's where they need their money. West Texas, some of it has some of it doesn't. East Texas, water rich, I would say, probably more than
Yep.
the most. But us here, we're surrounded by it, and yet we can't figure it out. And so I think to your point is that we do. I don't know if the word is intervention, but we certainly need some kind of comprehensive guidance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it's been hard for me, and I have a reputation of not being able to shut up, and
Well, you
I've
were
lived
an
up
elected
to- I've-
official.
I've
You
lived-
were an elected official.
I was.
You had that permit.
I was on the council when we built the last permanent water supply, which was and I actually made the motion for us to build the extension to the Colorado River of the Mary Roads pipeline, and so I have been there.
You've seen the conversation.
Yeah, and I understand. I understand the difficulty of the conversation, and I understand how hard it is to sit there and say, yes, we're going to increase water rates by X percentage, and that's what we've got to do. But at the same time, there's certain things that are just your responsibility when you take office.
Sure.
And if you're going to be a city council member, the city owns the water system, the regional water system, and it is your job to make sure there is water for the region. And so in a lot of ways, it was kind of if my job in Del Mar, I decided one day that we didn't need any professors. Well, the whole point, people pay taxes to the college, so we have professors teach people job skills so they can go get a job.
Or, I like how you mentioned what CCW, right? CCW as an entity, as the regional water supplier. At the end of the day, it's managed and owned by City Hall, right? The city government, city of Corpus Christi. I think maybe I'm making the point, is that when that brand, that entity is not maybe seen as the business is going well, the business as a business, that entity is
Right.
is going well, then I think that is going to create some challenges going into the next legislative session, where maybe there is going to be conversations about what those entities are comprised of and who owns them and how they're run.
Oh, I mean, we're involved enough at the state level and in the kind of the three-legged stool to know that conversation has already happened.
Yeah, I bet.
And it's the simple thing, and I'm a huge supporter of local control.
Sure, well, yeah.
It's
It's been getting gray, right? Like,
Well-
there's a lot of gray in that now.
and I think, yeah, the impulses of the state are not to local control.
Right.
And one of the things that we talk about in the community college sphere is Texas is actually fairly unique in that we have elected local boards for our community colleges. A lot of states, it is
statewide?
It's statewide. Governor appoints the community college board, or there's a statewide community college system where there's a board in the state capitol and there's nobody locally.
And the people aren't voting for them.
And people aren't voting for them. And I think one of the reasons why we have such good sensitivity to what the community needs are is because we live in the community.
Right.
And we work in the community. And so we want to make people happy, and we want to serve this community and make it better.
You want to listen to the people.
Right. We want to listen to them. And so I think what happens though is if you stop doing that, if you stop being responsive, then the state can step in and take it away from you.
Yeah.
And that's an unfortunate thing to have happen or consider. But at some point, these are core functions that have to be delivered to the community, or people really suffer, both health wise and economically. And so I wish that the governor's role was just being supportive, helping us with permitting, helping us with financing. But we had that, and it looks like we kind of tossed it away. And so if we're going to toss that away, then yeah, it's great that he'll step in more if that's what he's going to do.
Right. Well, you brought up healthcare too, and I think that's been something talked about. Is that we already challenged enough to recruit physicians. That's become a challenge for us. I think this conversation about water too is going to get kind of interesting for them as an industry as well. We were talking about that a little bit.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when we go into stage 4 or emergency stage 1, whichever you call it, it used to be called stage 4. Now they renamed it emergency stage 1. There's an exemption for health, but I've heard from a lot of doctors that they don't know what that means. And I remember when COVID happened, I went through all my tenants and I was like, who's going to be able to pay me? Who's not going to be able to pay me? And the one that caught me by surprise was the dentist, because they called one day and they said, hey, we can't get any PPE, so we can't do dental work. And so we can't operate.
Yeah.
Can we have a rent cut? And I had assumed, they're healthcare. They're going to get everything that they need because they're healthcare.
Yeah.
But no, and so there's a lot of the doctors kind of running around wondering whether, is this going to be like COVID where, yeah, if you're an emergency doctor, you got everything you need and you're working 24 hours a day. But if you're an elective surgery doctor or an elective procedure doctor, you've got to shut down. And there hasn't been a whole lot of detail coming out of the city thus far on what that's going to look like. I know that that's a
So you've been saying the C word, COVID, but we're effectively talking about the other C word,
curtailment. Yeah, which I've heard that word got banned at City Hall. And it's not a great thing to talk about, but
no, it's not.
I remember I was my mom. There's like the COVID deniers. My mom's on the absolute opposite end of the spectrum. She was following COVID when it was in China and calling me and saying, you got to watch this.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. But so were we as the Chamber World, and we were getting some pretty big reports from banks even and the world over that was saying, this is going to be a big deal. People are going to pass, but this too shall pass kind of vibes.
Right.
Was try not to destroy your economy, try not to destroy your market, try to stay open.
And I remember I was watching when, because I went to school in New York. I grew up here, but I went to school in New York. I went abroad for school, is my joke. And I saw when they shut down in-person dining for all the restaurants.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I called Aero Display here and I said, hey, I need 140 A-frame signs that say curbside takeout, reserve parking.
Yeah.
And they showed up 2 days before we closed restaurants.
So you were ahead of that curve.
And so I was ahead of that curve. And so, I mean, I think in a lot of ways we're in the same kind of position here on water. It's that time where, we hope that it doesn't happen.
Right.
We don't want it to happen.
And we don't want to use that word, but that's the word.
And we don't want to use that word. But as business owners who are responsible for taking care of ourselves and our families, but our employees' families and, our customers' families, we do need to start looking at those things on what do we do to prepare ourselves for this, so the impact, if it does happen, is the least it can possibly be. And that's I think people get insulted sometimes when they hear us doing stuff like that, but that's part of the responsibility of management and ownership and being in charge.
You know-
Is you have to look out for other people.
Of course. And there's that saying, it's business is not personal. I'm sorry. If I own a business, there's nothing more personal than that. That is my business, right? Like I am worried about it. I am affected about it. When during COVID, the other C word, which is kind of the PTSD I think we're dealing with this current situation, is it felt like, and that's how I felt. I felt like I was taking it personal. I kind of, every time a decision was starting to be made that we were told one thing, then it became another. Literally, we had met, this is when I was in San Antonio at the time, we had a meeting with the mayor that morning, and he says, I think we're fine. We're not going to shut anything down, yada, yada, yada. So he had already asserted himself that in that market, go tell your people, we are just fine. That's exactly what I go do. Next day, and fine. He told me that was the decision today. But if you thought maybe your decision was going to change by tomorrow, maybe you say, hey, by the way. So the next day, his decision was otherwise. And I think it had something to do that he knew the governor was going to make an announcement, and he wanted to get ahead of the governor and all the politics that you can imagine too. And so I was pissed. I took an incredible person that also said, you made me look like a liar. Like you told me we're fine. You told me we're just fine, and the next day the world is ending. And literally from then on, it was every day chasing our tail, trying to figure out what's next. That's what I'm saying. Maybe it feels very similar.
And I mean, I think it's there's been we're both government majors, and so we've read the books, and that there's kind of these great books like about Kennedy and the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the great leadership moments are when the leaders decide to drop the artifice of politics.
Yeah.
And just tell people
what it is.
These are the things, this is what it is. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. This is what we are thinking. We need you to be our partners in this.
Right.
And that does a couple things. One is it tells people, oh, this person's not acting like a politician anymore. Like this is serious. I need to pay attention.
Right.
Like, and I think people are a lot smarter than I think they're often given credit for. Every single one of us has had something bad happen to us in our life, and like what you just said, most people just want to know honestly what's happening,
right?
And honestly what they can do to cope. They know that they didn't elect somebody to a board that's going to be able to control everything that happens in the universe. They know that. And so I think, kind of if they downshifted to just brutal honesty, I think that would help a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Well, I think that's a good way to leave and maybe just get you back on the next time. We'll talk further on some other stuff. We are hitting the minute mark. Any parting words you want to share?
Well, I mean, I didn't mention it, but Del Mar Freedom to Dream has been growing great. That's our program where in-district students who are pay the tax rate. They get up to 3 years to get an associate's degree or a certificate if they've never been to college before or if they haven't finished more than 15 hours of college. And so we expected to have 500 students the first year. We have 2,724. And our professors are working very hard because
you got more students.
Yeah, I mean, we had it is our highest increase in student count ever. We shattered our record for total number of sections, for total hours taught. And I think we missed total enrollment record by about 50 students.
Oh, man.
And it was funny because we were getting the preliminaries and I was like, go find 50 people.
Let's get them signed up.
And we got above it. And then when drop came, we had enough drops where I was like, oh, man. And so, but that's been very successful. We're looking at ways to kind of hone that program. I think one of the things was we got a lot more students that aren't college ready than we expected to. And we knew that was always going to be the challenge with how the state's giving us funding because the state funds us now based on how many people finish, not how many classes we teach.
Which is a recent change, right?
That's a very recent change. Yeah. And so the thing that we really want to do going in next year is to identify those students that are going to need extra help getting out of remedial courses and start helping them in the summertime before they start, rather than just dropping them in the hot grease.
And
in
some
fall.
of those, I mean, and we can go on this too, but some of those drops are effectively just some needs of wraparound needs, right? Like they just didn't have a car that day.
Well,
or-
and I mean that is, you know, that was one of the things on the program is you know, I think we talked a lot about different needs of our students. To give you an example, 25% of our students, when we asked them, "Do you know where you're going to sleep tonight?" said no.
no.
And so we have 20,000 students. So that's 5,000 students
Wow.
that are, you know, they don't meet the technical definition of homeless. I think it's housing insecure, but, you know, we have students that sleep in cars. We have students who sleep in homeless shelters. We have students who sleep in parks. We have a lot of students who sleep on a couch
Wow.
someplace. And so part of the idea on doing it this way was to let them be able to use their Pell Grant. There's a lot of schools that have a Promise program. This is not a Promise program. This is a step above, because the Promise programs, they take all of your your financial aid first, and then they forgive the rest.
Gotcha.
For our students need their financial aid to be able to pay rent or pay for their car or help with childcare.
You reverse engineered it.
And so it was, you know, we looked at, okay, well, you know, the cost of providing childcare to all of our students who need childcare
That's probably the most expensive one, right?
is more than the budget for the college.
Yeah.
You know, we'd be a childcare agency. And in fact, if you know anybody who needs it, Workforce Solutions provides grants for people for childcare
They have
while they're in
a
school.
lot of great programs there.
And in fact, they spend more money on childcare than they do on unemployment benefits.
I bet.
And so, so the tack we took was, let's get tuition down and eliminate it for full-time students, because they will finish faster and then they will go out and make a living. And that way they can use their $7,000 a year from Pell Grant to fund those things that they know better than we can ever know
What they need. Right.
And so we were really happy. You know, a lot of the advocacy work that the Chamber and we did in D.C., along with other community colleges, they now have Pell for workforce education, which didn't previously exist.
Right.
And so, I mean, there's been a lot of progress, but that's how we're trying to expand access, is give students the capability to get through school quickly and find a job that pays them well, that they can take care of themselves.
And now it's just our job to make sure the jobs stay.
Yes.
Well, off to work we go, David.
Off to work we go.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you guys again next time.